everyone. It is 3:30, and it is Wednesday, January 17th, and we will call the regularly scheduled Redwood Coast Transit Authority meeting to order at this time. Nicole, if you would, please call the roll.
Director Short?
Here.
Director Cohen?
Here.
Director Keim?
Here.
Director Smith?
Here.
Chairman Gitlin?
Here. Okay, at this time, I think I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get into the meeting, item 6B on consent has been omitted at this time. Is that correct, Mr. Rye?
Yeah, there's been a change, and the fire district has decided to draft their own version of the MOU, so we're back to square one.
Okay. It is the beginning of the year, so we have the election of new officers. We'll select a new chair and vice chair at this time. Nominations are open.
Mr. Chair, I have a nomination for the chair for 2018. I nominate Director Heidi Keim.
Okay.
I'll second that, because my comment's going to be is the county has yet to do their committees for the following year, so we don't know where we're going to land, so I agree. Heidi should be chair.
Okay, so there's a second to that, and we'll conduct the vote at this time. Any discussion from the audience on the nomination? No comment. So at this time, we'll go right to the election. Nicole, if you would, please poll the item.
Director Cohen?
Yes.
Director Short?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Keim?
Yes.
Chairman Gitlin?
Yes. Okay, and the next one will be for vice chair. Nominations are open there.
Mr. Chair, I wish to nominate Director Cowan as vice chair for the 2018 year.
I'll second that.
There's a second to that. Okay. Again, any comments from the audience before we move forward? Okay, seeing no comments from the audience, we'll bring it back and we'll poll the vote, if you would, Nicole.
Director Short?
Yes.
Director Keim?
Yes.
Director Cohen?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Chairman Gitlin?
Yes. And Chairman Keim, you're in charge.
Do you want to finish out the meeting?
Just like that.
Well, that's not how it works. It's your call.
Just finish out the
Okay, all right. So you'll take this gavel here next meeting, that's for sure. All right. Moving forward, we'll go to the, item 6 again has been omitted. Approve the minutes for November 15th, 2017. I'll take a motion from that
I'll make a motion
to approve the minutes.
to approve the minutes.
Okay, second for that.
Second.
Okay, any comments from the audience on the minutes of November 15th, 2017, excuse me, I'm getting these dates all mixed up. Okay, seeing no comments, we'll bring it back to the board, and Nicole, if you would, call the roll.
Do I call Director Keim, are you a chair now, or do I start calling her chair at the next meeting?
Well, for protocol purposes, take the roll, and she is the chair. I'll just finish up running the meeting.
Okay.
If you want me to do that, that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Director Cohen?
Yes.
Director Gitlin?
yes.
Director Short?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Chairman Keim?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's get back into familiar territory or public comment. Anyone in the audience wish to come up to the dais and make a public comment, please identify yourself. And you got 3 minutes. I don't see anyone wishing to speak, so we'll close public comment. And we'll go to consent agenda. Item number 6A only.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda omitting item 6B.
Second.
Okay, is there any comment on consent agenda item 6A for before we move on? Seeing none, we'll go right back and we'll poll the vote. Nicole?
Director Short?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Gitlin?
Yes.
Director Cohen?
Yes.
Chairman Keim?
Yes.
All right, now we'll move on to item number 7, the update and construction of the new bus stop, 5th Street, near Safeway. That's the Jed Smith Center. Joe?
Good afternoon, Chair Keim and the board. The quick update on this is it was awarded to Hemmingson Construction on December 15th by email after we received a second quote. And then, as seems to happen to me a lot, key email where I made the award to them and give them the notice to proceed, he didn't get it. And I didn't find out about this until about January 4th when I asked for a status update because we had heard no ground had broke. And he said he didn't get the email. So then I resent it to him and he saw the original date and it's just nothing, and it's not his fault, I guess. But it didn't go through, so at that point, the encroachment permit work was submitted and I stopped by the city, so it's supposed to be awarded any day now. So then weather permitting, the work will start. So it was delayed about 3 to 4 weeks based on a Gmail failure. But anyway, so hopefully the project will be done, weather permitting by the end of the month. Then there's the moving of the shelter from the yard over. So, I made the bold prediction we'd have it done in a month 2 months ago and failed, so I'm afraid of any more bold predictions, but hopefully within 1 month it'll be done.
Board comments?
Mr. Chair, I have a comment. Mr. Rye, I was curious, the last meeting, we decided to go ahead and do the temporary park in front of Safeway. And I'm wondering how that's working out so far, if you've heard anything from the passengers, any comments they may have had, or how that's working out. If you can share anything you might know about that.
It's working. The very next day after the board meeting, we went back to picking people up in front of there, and I've heard nothing one way or the other. So that's what we've been doing since that day.
If you could, just from this point forward, maybe any communications with the contractors or followed up with a phone call.
Okay.
If you don't hear anything back, I would hate to go another couple of weeks on communication. Is going to be, important from this point going forward, with construction updates and such. We've had that glitch already.
Good idea.
Thank you.
And Joe, I would follow up with does property manager Lola Paquette from Mingtree, not Mingtree, I'm sorry, investment property specialists, are they in the loop on the time frame and the timetable?
Let me circle back with her and let her know what the delay was, because they probably thought it'd be built by now. So I'll update her on the snafu with the email, let her know it's coming, then we can bring up the cart corral idea, which we'd like to, I think we both talked about on our call the other day, that it would be a great addition. By that spot would be a place to leave your shopping carts, a little corral. So Safeway seemed real supportive, so I'll just remind her about that and see if we can't make that happen.
I'll open it up to the public at this time. Mr. Lonsdale, would you care to come up and address our group? You're almost the 6th member of this board, this Auguste board. So if you have something you'd like to contribute, we'd like to hear it.
Madam Chair, members of the board, congratulations, by the way, to both of you. My name is Bill Lonsdale. I live in Crescent City, and I'd like to take an opportunity to thank Mr. Rye and the staff for pursuing this with vigor. It's unfortunate that all of the pieces couldn't fall into place the way we were envisioned, but I appreciate the fact that even though they don't like to do it, the Redwood Coast Transit is continuing to service the old stop until the new stop is built, and that's commendable. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments from the public on item number 7? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, and we'll come back to the board. Any additional comments at this time? Seeing none, Nicole, if you would, there is no vote on this, I'm sorry. So this is just an update, no action taken.
Correct.
Okay. We'll move on to item number 8, presentation and acceptance of the fiscal year 2016-17 Redwood Coast Transit Authority financial audit. Joe, anything on there you'd like to highlight and bring to our attention?
No, not really. Other than we're blessed with Dan Herron, the financial guru and brains of our partnership. Dan's with us today, and he's here to maybe kind of just give an overview of the audit. It is routine. There was no findings. We enjoyed another good year working with RJ Ricciardi, and we, as noted in the brief staff report, this is the third year of what was a 3-year agreement for them to do the audit, the annual financial audits for Redwood Coast Transit. So I'm going to check with Autumn to see if there's any extension mechanism. If not, then we'll need to go out and do this again and procure another 3 or 5 years of audit services later this year for next year's audit. But it was really good to work with those guys. And we'll be submitting, once this is accepted, it goes to the State Controller's office as part of our reporting mandate.
I would just have a question before Joe begins his presentation. If it's the third of the 3 years, do we have to do a new RFP? If you're happy with it, can we bring this back on the next agenda with the chair's permission?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to check with the attorney, with Autumn Lunan, to see if there is a way that we can extend them, because we are pleased with them. I don't see it in the agreement per se, but she may have an opinion that we can. If not, we're going to need to do an RFP.
Okay. Joe? Sorry, I got my people mixed up. Dan?
What he said. Hi, I'm Dan Heron. I don't see you often enough, but it's good to be here talking about this. Joe gave you pretty much all that's needed to be said with the audit. To answer the specific question, is 3 years a mandate? Typically, the federal government says it has to be fair bid on a regular basis. Now, they usually leave you 3, 5, 6, it starts getting ripe. So we prefer to check with legal on that and decide. But they've done a very good job, clean audit.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Anything added on there you would like to add at this point? We'll close your presentation, ask if the public has any input on the audit. Don't see any of that. We'll close the public comment on the item number 8, and I'll entertain a motion to accept and file the 2016-17 RCTA financial audit.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion by Director Short, second.
I'll second.
Okay, and a second by Chairman Keim, and we'll call the vote.
Director Gitlin?
Yes.
Director Cohen? Yes. Director Short?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Chairman Keim?
Yes.
We'll move on to item number 9, the presentation of the fiscal year 2016 annual report. The route level performance statistics, which you all have seen in your packets. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Gitlin. And this item is kind of a continuation. When we needed to meet in November to deal with another issue, so I put together an executive summary, but I didn't have the full data at that time, so we've went ahead and finished the report. So we can kind of quickly go through some of the introduction part, because we did touch on the system-wide stats 2 months ago, but we didn't have the route level data compiled at that time. This is the format that we've inherited, so the board's been receiving the report in this format for several years. Just to refresh everyone's memory, the system-wide performance was down about 5% on ridership last year versus the previous fiscal year, and that continued a downward trend for the last 2 years for sure, and generally over the last 5. There was a slight glitch where we increased ridership a little bit in 14-15, but then it slid back. The annual service hours last year were down, so that's some positive news in that ridership stayed at the same downward projection as the year before, but we expended less hours to do so, so our productivity naturally actually stabilized and bounced up a little bit. Then we went into the route-by-route information, that's some of which is new because we didn't have it completed back in November. the way, and it's a little hard with black and white copies, I do apologize, I'll try to do a hatching scheme or something next time, but in the color version, you could see if it was a positive statistical trend, it was noted in green, and a negative in like a peach colored. But most of the trends, our costs have increased system-wide about 10% last year, and it's mostly labor costs to do with the increasing First Transit contract costs, then divided over less hours. So that causes each individual mode or each route to have a higher cost overall. At the same time that, so most of those are in the 10% cost increase range per hour and per passenger. Overall operating cost was like 6% higher. But we reduced hours, so that makes it go up a little bit more per hour and per passenger. Our total passengers was down 5%, excuse me, overall, but certain routes did better than others. Fare box revenue was actually up 3%. It's about 5,000 more than the prior fiscal year. Not sure about why that is, because we did not do a fare increase or anything during, the fare increase that we just did was after this reporting period. So that's an interesting stat. I don't have an answer for that exactly. If we go through the modes, dial-a-ride only, if you isolate dial-a-ride from everything else we do, the operating cost went down on dial-a-ride 8%, because that's strictly driven by how many trips are requested and delivered. So dial-a-ride demand was down, so hours were down. That's different than how fixed route works. If ridership goes down on fixed route, it doesn't necessarily lower your cost because the bus is driving around according to its schedule. It just has less bodies inside the bus. But on the dial-a-ride, the 8% decrease in passengers correlated exactly with an 8% drop in operating costs and hours. Our productivity, which we can control, actually was improved. It was up 5 to 7%, 5% per mile and 7% per hour. And I think that's attributed to the new scheduling software that First Transit implemented late in this fiscal year, and it's working pretty nicely for us. So that's what I think happened there. Service hours were down 14%. And fare box revenue was up slightly, 5% up. That could be a way. One of the things that we're working with First Transit on, and I think we're going to be there starting perhaps as soon as this month or next, is we're going to get better fares by route data. For all these years, it's just been aggregated into one pot, even though I'm sure at the rider level, driver level on each trip it is there, but they've provided it to the agency as just one big pot, and we've been then forced to use a formula to divvy up the fares. So this may or may not have reflected an actual change in operating practice, but we have it as up 5% from the year before for dial-a-ride fares. Turning back a couple pages, we look at the Crescent City local fixed routes, which is Route 1, 2, 3, 4. Blue, red, green, and yellow. The same theme that you're going to see on every road, our operating costs went up about 10%, 11% in this case for the Crescent City locals compared to the year before, and that's labor costs, almost exclusively. Total passengers was down 2%, so the Crescent City local routes are doing a little better than the system as a whole. Our productivity on passengers per hour and miles down 3%, so that's similar to the 2% drop in passengers. We provided 1% more service hours than the prior year, so I think that was just kind of a trick of the calendar, but slightly more hours on the Crescent City locals. And the fare box revenue drop is, again, I think that's just the way of the divvying up the formula, because we don't have exact level data, and so I wouldn't read too much into that. The Crescent City local routes are still doing well. Production of over 10 riders an hour is pretty good for a small town.
But in
Yes, ma'am.
one part, you're saying that 1 and 3 are down, but 2 and 4 are up. Do you know what caused that? Is there any way of really even finding that out?
No, I don't know. We could ask around. 1 and 2 are sister routes, so the fact that one dropped ridership and the other increased, I think it might have been, they're not really losing,
Okay.
it's sort of like a same route, but why Route 4 went down and 3 went up is a good question. I really don't have an answer for that. Something to be researched a little further.
Joe, how is your figures for total passengers calculated? The reason I ask, let's just take 16, 17, fourth quarter, we've got 20,597 passengers. That equates to about 226 passengers a day, which seems like an awful lot to me. Is there something I'm missing on how that figure is calculated? How do we come up with such a high number of passengers? Or am I just assuming wrong?
No, I think you've got it. Each hour that the bus is out there, it's carrying 10.46 in that quarter, riders per hour, so that adds up. So the buses are out there about 12 hours per day, so that adds up, so then that would be,
That would only be 120 riders.
yeah, 120 riders, right.
But if you divide this, it's 226 riders a day, so it's, it just seems like a high number.
There's 4 routes underneath this. Yeah, this is accumulation of 1, 2, 3, and 4.
I found that to be kind of consistent with the other 4 individual routes. It just seemed like the numbers were high, so I was wondering how that...
If you take the total number of service hours for that quarter was just under 2,000 at about 10 people per hour, so that does kind of equate to the 20,000, so the productivity times the amount of revenue hours computes.
You see where I'm coming from on just taking any one of those quarters for the Crescent City locals?
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, if you wanted to, we could take the cumulative, 84,000 and divide that by 365. I mean, you come up with 230 a day.
It would be even worse, actually, because we don't do 365. We don't, there's 52 Sundays that we don't provide service, plus a few holidays, so
that
it's more like,
That number would even be higher.
yeah, it would be even higher, yeah. But then the number of hours that we are serving is in the 6th column down, or whatever, revenue service hours. That times the hourly productivity does compute to the total of passengers.
Can I do a follow-up question with regard to what Director Short is asking? Now, I'm curious to know the protocol on someone comes on the bus, and is there a button that's pushed indicating a new passenger? Is there what's the protocol and how we count passengers?
It's tallied by hand on a paper manifest that the drivers carry, so with a line for each of their trips. So if they're going to do 8 hours worth of trips, they'd have like 16 lines, and they would show each hourly trip, and then there's the breakdown of the fare categories, and they kind of make a mark each time someone from that fare category boards, and they have a total, and that adds up at the end of the day. That's our ridership count. We probably should have a clicker system too, but we don't. At this point, there's no clickers in the bus. So they're doing it all. They're just doing it as they pick people up with the clipboard.
Defer to the chairman on this, just see if we want to discuss that in a future meeting. You can make that decision
What was that?
about how the protocol and how we count passengers.
Well,
Maybe need to be reviewed, and that's up to you.
it seems to me that we really could have some sort of, with this software that we have, is there an additional software feature that we could add to put on each bus? I mean, passengers could load a card maybe that is associated with them. They swipe their card as they get on the bus. It just seems like there could be an easier tracking, some sort of data collection.
I wonder if there's just
Automated.
an error in the cells of your spreadsheet here. Because if you look at fare box revenue, those dollar figures for those 4 quarters are exactly the same as the total passengers, which would lend someone to believe that each person paid exactly $1 each to ride.
Right.
I
And that's
don't
that's
think
what I
that's
did in the assumptions, because that was the fare last year. So last fiscal year, the fare was $1 for everybody.
So that is correct. Okay.
I mean, it's probably not, Darren. You know, they're probably, you know, in real life, it never comes out that clean, but this was based on the assumptions we have, when all we have is one glut of fare box money, and we have to use a formula to project it out. I just use the
Okay.
actual dollar cash
Okay.
fare.
Well, that kind of answered my question on how do we come up with that number, so.
Going back to Chair Keim's suggestion, is there better ways to do this? I'm sure. This is about as low-tech as you can get.
Right.
On the lower end of the cost spectrum, we could get the clickers. They cost more than you would think, but maybe $1,000 or so a piece. There's an outfit from Massachusetts that's still making these, even in this day and age. But then beyond that, we could get electronic fare boxes that count the riders. But yeah, we could get lasers in the doors. We could get a lot of tech toys to count them and probably get a little more accuracy, but none of them are perfect. But this is what we have now, and it's all being entered manually on pen and paper at this point.
I would love to see some ideas of, you know, a couple of them, ideas and cost associated with that, sometime in the next meeting or two.
Okay.
I mean, at least it gives us this start-off point of finding out whether we can or cannot afford this. But sometimes it feels these assumptions are just being made and guesses, educated guesses. And I know they're educated, but it'd be nice to have a clearer tally.
It'll be a great project for our upcoming short-range transit plan. We're going to need to compile a list of some needed capital projects that we could then search for money for. So this is a good one.
So Joe, if I could ask a question, I'm sorry to interrupt your presentation,
all right.
but probably better to do it now. It still puzzles me that overall ridership is down, because in my mind, we have a transit-dependent ridership here in our town. So I know we've talked in the past about taxi service, and I think you mentioned that taxi service is on the increase. There's more taxi service that could be competing with our transit service. That may or may not be true, but I'm wondering if you have any information that might say that the taxi service is increasing, and maybe there's more riders on the taxis as opposed to being on the bus, if you would know anything about that.
I'll have to do some research. I do not know. I think anecdotally, when we were doing some of the market research that's on maybe the next item or the one after that, we heard that there could be, you know, maybe the taxis are doing a more lively business, or maybe there's an Uber or Lyft enterprise up here. I don't know. I think one thing we can point at that we know fairly certain from talking about it for 2 years now is that the Urux service has cannibalized some of our ridership. We saw that when we're about to get there, but Route 10 lost 25% last year, and then we wisely cut it when we were looking for ways to save money. But 25% loss on one route is pretty significant. So that's mixed into this 2 to 5% loss for sure.
So then going back to the Urux service, I'm trying to recall, but that's more of a demand responsive service, not fixed route, correct?
Yes, but I
So-
think that they do standing trips in the morning at commute hours that come into town.
So that's more of a fixed route service, but not really a fixed.
It's kind of a
not
hybrid.
technically a fixed route
Yes.
service. Okay,
It's
thank
a
you.
hybrid.
Thank you.
Additional comments, public comments at this time on item number 9. I'm sorry,
Should we finish we didn't get through all the routes and stuff.
oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had finished. Go
No,
ahead,
no,
please.
we were getting rolling, but those were great questions. Moving on at each individual route, and Supervisor Cohen made mention of this, so we sort of touched on it, but some routes are doing better than others, and each route's, you know, they're a living creature, and they change a little over time. So last fiscal year was good for Route 1, which is the blue route, which is one of the two that do a big loop. This is the one that's more of a clockwise loop. It actually gained ridership. Productivity was up 10%. The operating cost is pretty steady, all the routes, because our labor costs went up. So that, you're going to see that around 10% on everything. But the passengers went up 13%, so Route 1 had a good year. at the expense of Route 2 that we touched on. Route 2 actually lost 9%. So that route, those two routes as a pair, which they really are, actually increased ridership slightly. But yeah, it came at the expense of Route 2, and Route 1 was the beneficiary. Route 3, which is the route from basically up and down North Crest, from the Cultural Center out to as far as the Senior Center area, that one increased by 1%, so it had a pretty good year. That one also benefited from, we might see even better numbers this next year, because that one we modified in July and started serving the senior apartments that are nearby off of Harding there. So hopefully that one continues to grow. I've heard good things about that, providing that higher level of service for those folks. Route 4, on the other hand, dropped at about the system-wide average, 4%. So it did the second worst of the local routes, and there's no other route down around Howland Hills, so it's not like this route is competing with something. There was some construction maybe in the summer at the very end of the fiscal year that caused us to do diversions and modify the route, because I believe sand, that one was closed, so we had to kind of do a major reroute on it. But other than that, it's down about the same as the system-wide number. And then rolling into our intercity routes, as aforementioned, the Route 10 dropped 24%. During the year, so obviously it's a good core of its ridership was being siphoned off most likely by the Yurok Tribal Transit Service. So at the end of this fiscal year is where we pulled the plug on that route, and justifiably so. Route 20 is our main route that serves not only Klamath but all the way down to Arcata and then all the way up to Smith River. It did right about what the system-wide average is. It lost 4% of ridership from the year before, productivity down 5%. We ran a little bit more hours on it, so there was no reduction in service hours last year on that route at all. And the fare box revenue was up, but I think that's just a product of the formula when we capped the local routes at what their actual cash fare was, and then the remainder got assigned to this one. Route 199 is the last route in the family, and it did not have a good year. Its ridership was down 11%. This is the 3 trips a day route out 199 to Hyuchi and Gasky. We provided actually 2% more service hours than the prior year on that route, but it didn't respond in a ridership increase. In fact, it dropped 11%. Yeah, so any other question? That is, now we are complete, so we can take more questions on that.
Additional director's comments at this time for Mr. Rye?
Yeah, yes, I have one,
Please.
Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, you're not chair, Madam
okay.
Chair.
It's confusing.
Yeah. Joe, we talked about this before, but we've talked about trying to increase our tourism ridership. And I know that we have that route by Prairie Creek as part of the Klamath Run. So, and I think before you told me that we don't have a way to kind of separate that to see how that compares to the overall ridership down there. Or maybe we do now, but I was just kind of curious about if somebody could mention how that's been working out for us. You know, if we're getting, you know, good ridership there at Prairie Creek, or how that's going so far.
Good question. Prairie Creek, anecdotally, we get a lot of positive feedback from that stop. We'd have to do some sampling. Right now, we don't know where our riders get on by stop. We really are operating, you know, kind of in the pre-radar era here. So we don't know. We'd have to go do a manual sampling count, which we actually just did over this last week on another stop at the visitor center, at Kuchel Visitor Center. To just check a trip in the morning, because we have a kind of an operational issue festering, and we wanted to see if anyone was getting on or off there on that early morning trip, and they weren't. But, so yeah, we have to do manual sampling. And this ties in with the earlier discussion, in addition to fare collection technology, we certainly could use a on-off count by stop technology as well for planning purposes, and they can be the same thing or it could be different, but yeah, we don't know where the riders get on and off. We don't have that fine grain of data at all. The driver's captured on their paper manifest, so it's a matter of then pulling the paperwork and creating reports, so thank goodness it's there if we need it, but yeah, we don't routinely get a look at it.
So does your, it's probably hard to say, but based maybe on what your drivers have said or other comments, how do you think that's worked out in Prairie Creek? Do you have any feel for that? Is it successful?
I think it's successful, yeah, in meeting with the parks folks, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but they were very happy with it. They just finally got our bus stop signs installed, so both stops there in front of the visitor center now have Redwood Coast Transit bus stop signs. That took a long time, but we finally got it done. So they're really happy with us. So I think it's been very successful. And I think the board's push to increase tourism ridership is going to happen like that. We got to get the stops in and then market it. But yeah, I think Prairie Creek's been very successful.
So, Mr. Roy, that goes back to past conversations. That's great if we can attract more tourists. I think as a tourist, I'm not sure that the local transit is the way to do it, but if it's working, it's working. I really have said this before over the past year, and I'm going to continue to say it. We have students that travel to and from school, and we really need to capture it. And almost 9 months ago, a year ago, we talked about, or I suggested that we reach out to the colleges and we start promoting ridership down there. And I know you were busy and it never got done, and then there was a little bit of survey done in the fall which showed that the students were interested. So once again, I would like to say I really think it's important that we do that outreach to the students to see if it's there. I believe the need is there. I think we saw that in the fall, and I think we need to do that again so that if we do find that the need is there, that we can do the proper outreach come March, April. That's the time we need to start doing that, and I would like to look more into that somehow.
No, I agree, and I think we'll touch on the market research stuff that we just did recently, because we did talk to a lot of folks from the students and administrators, so I think there's some exciting news, and we're talking about a grant that we're going to be asking for support to apply for that would grease the wheel to get HSU free rides on our system. So.
Excellent, thank you so much.
Good. Additional directors' comments? Seeing none, public comments on item number 9.
Number 10.
I don't think are we looking at the individual, I thought we were, Joe, did we mix up 9 and 10 at all? I'm sorry.
No, 10's the survey, that's different.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep, so we're still talking about the route
I don't think we moved on
stops.
to 10 yet.
Nope.
And
Nope, you're right.
because I have some questions on 10, and I've had them all put apart. So we're still on 9, and we're talking about the annual report and the route level performance statistics, so we're clear on that. Item number 9, go.
Mr. and Madam Chair, Bill Lonsdale again. I have a couple of specific questions and then some observations, if you'll indulge me. You see the value of this kind of detailed report. It allows comparison with past performance and basis for trying to determine where we're going in the future. And it's very welcome, and I'm glad that we're doing it again. As far as Route 1 is concerned, or Routes 1 and 2, actually, I would make a recommendation that in the description of the route in there, you add the Open Door Wellness Clinic, which is a major destination and I think is served by that route on a very nice outdoor stop. As far as Route 3 is concerned, I believe you have lost some ridership that even though the ridership is up, you've lost some potential ridership by cutting the route off too soon, because what you've done by turning it at the senior center, unless there's a demand by phone for it, is you cut off several major mobile home parks. And there's a potential ridership there. So I would like to recommend that you turn around at Old Mill Road instead of at the senior center on a regular basis, because there were stops up there and people used them. As far as Route 4 is concerned, you've abandoned service to the Rancheria Community Center and the Head Start Center unless somebody calls in and asks for it. calling in and asking for something is not easy for a lot of folks. And I just wonder how effective that approach is. And both in the case of the cutoff of Route 3 and the cutoff of Route 4, the justification is we can get back to the transit center quicker and have breaks. That's not how you attract riders. As far as Route 20 is concerned, I was appreciative of the discussion of the funding of Route 20, but I didn't see any discussion of the factors that may have led to the changes in the ridership. In the future, it would be useful to have that. As far as Route 199 is concerned, the report points out correctly that this is political. It was something that was fought for by Supervisor Sullivan and continues to be supported by Supervisor Howard, and it's not going to go away as long as they're in office. I don't think, even though it's not productive, it's a matter of fairness, and they advance that as an argument. That whole section of the county is cut off unless there's a bus that runs up 199. So we're almost obligated to do that, even though we take a loss in doing so. As a general observation, your board has realized in this meeting that the boarding level data, which has been laboriously hand-entered into logs over the many years that I've been familiar with Redwood Coast Transit, is a gold mine if it can be exploited. We live in a world of data exploitation. I'm out of time. May I continue or not?
Please.
And it strikes me that I hope that Redwood Coast Transit has preserved those hand logs for several years back, because if they can be put into a database and exploited, you're going to have a fine-grained level of detail that will answer a lot of the questions that come up with why is this happening, why is that happening, because you have where, when, who, and that sort of thing that you can pull out of the data. Now, it's a horrendous job, but we have computer science groups at the college and at the high school. Wouldn't it be a great project to take on to convert those hand logs into a database that allows people to practice in data input, more importantly in quality control, in normalization, and in developing routines to extract the kind of data that you want. All of those are things that computer scientists need to know how to do. And here would be a practical application if they could do it. And so I suggest that to you as something to consider for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lonsdale. All right, any additional public comments on agenda item number 9? Tamara, for the record, just come on up and identify yourself.
I'm Tamara Layton, the Executive Director of the Del Norte Local Transportation Commission, and I would like to comment on the Hayuchi-Gasky route that we have, and that I believe that it is important to the community. I also believe that the Redwood Coast Transit Authority plans to increase ridership on that route by more actively pursuing the ridership to Jed Smith State Park and putting a bus stop there and encouraging folks from the community. Mr. Ryan and I have talked about that in the past, and I think that that's a lot of potential there. It's encouraging for me to hear that the Prairie Creek route is acceptable by many folks, and that the transit folks are encouraged by that. And I'm equally encouraged by the potential of boosting that, making more sense of that Hayuchi-Gasky route by really encouraging the ridership to Jed State Park. It's a great place to go for our community members. It's hard to get up to the sun sometimes, and for the low cost of a transit ride, I think that there are many folks in our community who might like to go to the state park and hang out in the sun at the river. So I'd encourage that development as soon as possible to get that bus stop up near the park. It's on the way, so different from other discussions about attracting tourism and tourists from our community to a park. Sure, the tourists might take that route, but I also think a lot of our local folks just want to get up to the river, and that's a good way to do it. So I see a lot of potential for that route that we're getting to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. Additional public comments at this time? All right, so we'll close the public comments on agenda item 9 and bring it back to the board. Before we do that, Joe, is there any action to be taken on this? Is this an accept and file?
Yeah.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to accept and file agenda item number 9, which is the annual report of route level discussion performance statistics, and I'll entertain a motion for that.
I'd like to see before
Sir,
we accepted this,
you want to have it?
I still am having trouble with total passenger figures that we have on here.
Okay.
They just look like they're elevated to a degree that really puts the report into question as to its accuracy. So, Joe, if you could take this back and let us know how those figures are derived. I mean, I'm just up here doing a couple of little calculations on the calculator, and I just don't see where we're having that kind of ridership.
So you would like item number 9 brought back before we accept and file it? You'd like it brought back at the next meeting? Is that what I'm hearing, Director Short?
Yes,
And for discussion?
just so we can file an accurate report.
So with an explanation and an understanding of how the counts are taken, that they reconcile, is that what I'm hearing from you?
So
In
we
your
can-
mind?
So we can know for sure that the total number of passengers is accurately reported.
Okay. Well, we don't have a motion, and I don't think
Can
we
you,
have a...
could I ask for some help then on an example of where something's not calculating for us? Because I'm trying to figure that out, but it looks like it adds up. If you take the 4 individual routes, 1 through 4, say for fourth quarter, and add up each of them, it does add up to the 20,000. That might be tripping us up, because that's just breaking out the 4 Crescent City routes and putting them together.
So are the routes run 12 hours a day?
Approximately, yes. But each one's, let me step back from that. Each one then would be half that, because the 1 turns into the 3, half hour this, half hour that. So the revenue hours per day on like the Route 1, for example, is probably around 6. Because it does a half an hour of work, and then it's off for a half an hour, then on, then off, and on. It's a half hour. So yeah, it'd be like 6 a day. And then 6 days a week. Slightly shorter on Saturday, just slightly.
So that, 6 days a week, that's 313 days a year. Times 6 hours a day is 1,878. On Route 1, you say that we have 10.97 passengers per hour. So that works out to about okay, that's where I was, it works out to about the figure that you have there on Route 1. So I guess it just seems like a lot, but it does explain a lot when we're only running 6 hours a day and not 12.
Yeah, and I apologize, yeah, because
So
each
that-
route
that
flip-flops,
makes-
right?
That makes it make a lot more sense then.
Okay, so
Okay.
I'll offer for the motion again and see if we have a second to file it. And then I will also ask for at next month's meeting that we have a discussion on the protocol of how this count takes place, and to see if there are any question marks that remain in Director Short's mind, and for that matter, any member of our board, that you're in a comfort zone. I sense you're not in a comfort
Yes,
zone.
and you did get a motion?
No, we're not yet. We don't have a motion yet.
Well, now that that has been explained, that does bring the figures back into perspective. So I will move that we accept this.
I'll second that.
report.
And we have a motion and a second. Any additional comment from the public on this? Seeing none. Nicole, you'll poll the vote.
Director Gitlin?
Yes?
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Cohen?
Yes.
Director Short?
Yes.
Chairman Keim?
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 10, which is what we see on the screen right now, so everybody sees that, which is the presentation of this onboard rider survey market research project. So give us, we've looked at this report, so give us the highlights on how you'd like to see this matter discussed. I had a couple of questions on some of the routes in question.
I knew this wouldn't be readable on the screen, so I wanted to print this for visibility purposes.
I'm sorry.
Do you have magnifying glasses?
Yeah.
Did you give us a
Anybody need
magnifying
my
glass as well?
-1 font or something.
Yeah, it's very small. It's a lot of data, and I apologize. We can try to blow it up next time.
I can't, I'm gonna get wrinkles trying to read that.
It's a lot of data on a small piece of paper. Yeah, at least on a computer, you can move around and zoom a little bit. So this is the first product of our 2017 onboard survey and market research project. This is the onboard survey that took place with a crew that came to town and assisted riders in completing surveys in the last week of September. The survey instrument was a two-sided English and Spanish survey with some longitudinal satisfaction questions, some demographic questions, and some sort of current burning topic questions mixed in. Answers for most of the questions, the answers were strongly disagree to strongly agree on like a 1 to 7. So if they agreed with the statement, they would put a 7 if they completely agreed, or if they completely disagreed, it'd be like a 1. And then, so higher scores mean more positive agreement, lower scores less. So we were able to receive, then following that, and we're just getting the data starting to trickle in, I'm reviewing the first draft of it, we did a series of stakeholder interviews and focus groups with different community members, some riders, our drivers, students at the college, folks from the visitor center, and then a group from the State and National Park Service. So we did we met with those guys. That happened in mid to late November, I believe it was. So that data is just now starting to trickle in. So next time we meet, we'll have some information on that. But this one's been done, and we just got the results and some preliminary tallies on this information. This is our riders' input on stuff. So the methodology, the crews would split up, one person working each bus, handing out the surveys, encouraging participation, helping them fill them out if necessary. Again, we did a two-sided English-Spanish, but only a handful were completed on the Spanish side. I don't have the exact number, but I can get you that. But it was a single digits, very small amount. We tried to collect surveys in ratio proportion to ridership from each route. And generally did pretty good at that. We're going to see a slide in a minute. Most routes were pretty much surveyed according to their ridership, but Route 20 ended up getting over-surveyed. We got a lot of surveys from that, and Dial-A-Ride got under-surveyed. Not sure why. We received a total of 149 completed surveys. The weather cooperated for the most part. I believe we had rain on the third and final day of the effort, but at least the first two were dry. And we talked about 7 would have been a strongly agreed score, 0 total disagreement, and our actual average response ranges span from 3.5 to 6.1 as we'll go through the questions. This slide shows the blue is the percentage of actual ridership on the route that we have, and then red is the number of samples that came in a comparative ratio. So most of them came pretty close. Route 3 provided us a little more input than the ridership would have determined. Same with 2. 4 came in light. We don't know why. We didn't get as many surveys. And this is by one of the questions asked, what is your most commonly used route or like home route? So, yeah, I'm not sure why 4 came in light. 20, we got a lot of surveys, which makes some sense because it's a long ride. It's easier to get folks to fill out a survey when they're on a route of length. 199, we got quite a few little surveys in there. And Dollar Ride, we didn't do so well. We just got a handful of responses that said Dollar Ride was their primary one. Some of the folks might use both, but they may have identified a fixed route as their primary. First question, the big one, the general satisfaction one, RCTA meets my transit needs. The cumulative response was 5.5, which is kind of above average. Then we followed up with a question that allowed them to write or say whatever was on their mind, what can be improved. We heard all kinds of things, but the common refrains was more seating, more shelters, better bus stop maintenance of what we have in general. Then there was, this was right after the hours got cut. That was still sort of a fresh wound from 2 months before, so some folks wanted the hours restored on Saturday and the last evening trip that we reduced starting back in July to make budget. Then the usual request for more frequent service, which is always going to happen in these surveys. And then improved communications between management and riders, which is rider alerts, getting the word out and changes. The ridership had just been through a tumultuous period of change, so obviously that one's not surprising that they wanted to see improved communications with that. There we go, sorry about that. Question 2 asked if RCTA was a safe experience, and this one scored the highest of any question that we asked them. 6.1 was the strength of response that they agreed it is safe. It's great in general that riders find the system is good and safe to use. It contrasts a little with what we heard in some of the focus groups and chats with community folks that indicated they thought the RCTA might have a bit of a safety issue or an image issue, but the riders didn't see it that way. There were a couple anecdotal comments about that we should be able to refuse service to intoxicated people, which we can. The next question, we asked them about the cultural center directly. Is it adequate? The response was 5.5, which was kind of above average, middle of the pack. So the riders generally think that it's adequate facility, not as unsavory as some of the input we heard from other community members let us know. And when we cross-tab that by gender, a bit surprisingly, the female respondents actually rated it safer than the males. Question 4, we asked if safety is more important than having buses go through parking lots to shorten walks. And this is one of the current events issues that was being debated here at the time the survey was put together. This one scored at 5.75, which is above average. Riders feel that safety is more important than driving the bus into parking lots to shorten their walk. There was no split on the gender. It's about exactly the same on this one. Question 5 is the yin-yang to question 4. So to be fair, we asked question 5, traveling in the parking lots to shorten the walk is more important than having the bus run more frequently, which is the exact byproduct of not being able to stay in our running time cycles. And this is the lowest score of any by far. 3.5 was the answer, which means the riders don't feel that going into parking lots is more important than frequent service. So they don't want to see service frequency diluted in order to get closer to every destination. There was also no split in gender on that one. It was about the same. The riders seem to understand the situation that the more time spent driving around parking lots slowly is time not spent getting them around town. Question 6 asked, it's about a related issue, but it asked about how the riders like the clock face scheduling, which means the bus comes by at the same time every hour, so that it's easy to memorize. And they very strong, second highest positive rating, almost 6.1, 6.09, was they very much like the clock face schedule, so they don't have to carry a schedule. They like the easily memorizable times. We have a very small system, so a lot of folks just memorize their route, what time it comes by certain places, and they don't need to refer to a schedule, which helps us on print costs too. Question 7 asked if we should try to basically keep that in place, and it scored almost as high, 5.8, that we should try to stay with the current hourly and half hour. I'm thinking that a few of the folks thought maybe if they said no, that we might be able to go to more frequent service. I don't know, that's the only guess I have on that, but it scored above average, so almost as high as the other questions that were related. Question 8 took a turn asking about the old $30 one-way cash fare that was in place prior to October 1st. So at the time of this survey, this was a tricky one, it was still in place for a couple more days. We changed the fares effective October 1st, which is the next week after the survey. So we asked them, and it really didn't score that high. So to the riders, it didn't seem to be as much of a barrier as maybe I had thought. 4.8, it was just an average response. Maybe the riders had just become used to buying the weekly pass for $35, which saves them money, or they otherwise thought it wasn't as big a barrier to traveling to Humboldt as we might have thought it was. Only time will tell. We changed the fare structure and made it much more affordable, so we'll know, by the end of this fiscal year how that impacts things. Question 9, we asked them if they were interested in service past Gasky on 199 into Oregon. We've heard a lot of chatter about increased medical destinations, shopping and stuff up in Medford and Grants Pass. It scored average, so among the current riders, it didn't seem to have as much favor as some of the committee members that chatted with us about it in the interviews and stuff. Still could be a potential market, but yeah, among the current riders, it was, met with so-so response. Question 10 gets to some of what we talked about, our data deficiencies earlier. Real-time bus location will fuel an app where you can see where your bus is at exactly and know if you've missed it or if it's just a little late and it's still coming up the street. You just can't see it yet. So it really helps folks with the uncertainty of whether they missed a bus or not, especially when you're dealing with frequencies of every 30 or 60 minutes. Missing a bus can be a big deal. So we asked them if they would ride more if they had that, and it scored okay, 4.9, about average. It's possible they didn't understand how it could work. This is one thing that hopefully we'll be able to bring to the table pretty soon. First Transit pledged it in their proposal, and they have a simple version, a simple low-cost version, and they're working on getting it implemented in the buses. And hopefully that'll give us the ability to push the bus location public. It's yet to be determined. I haven't seen the project work yet, and I believe not all the buses have their geotabs installed yet, but hopefully this is something in the next year we deliver, and at the very least it'll give us planning level data that we need to make good decisions, but on the high end it might be something we can provide to the riders and that they can look up on the web or on their smartphone and see, so it could be really good. Question 11, we'd asked if they would ride more if transfers were more reliable, and it scored about average, 4.9. In the prior year, we had a lot more problems with missing transfers because of the late buses. On July 1, we streamlined the routes a little bit around town here, and that's made a big difference. So maybe that sort of mitigated their issues. Not sure why it didn't score higher, because I've seen some really angry people when they missed their bus at the cultural center. But that was then, this is now, so hopefully the problem's been improved. So maybe that's why it didn't score higher. But it's still an issue with any transit system. You want to make your transfers, and a late bus can cause missed transfers. So obviously a serious issue, but it didn't score as high as we would think. Question 12, we'd ride more if there were more shelters. As expected, this scored high, 5.5, above average. We know this is a deficiency in our system, and we're continuing to work towards it. It's also a deficiency in our management model, to be honest. It's much, from working full-time all my life in this business to doing this part-time from afar, it's a lot harder to do bus stop projects in this model than it ever was in my other stops. So I can vouch for that. But it doesn't mean we're going to let it beat us. But yeah, so this is an issue. We want to get more shelters and even benches. Maybe we can't afford all the shelters we want immediately, but we could get benches to at least get some seating out there, because folks ask for seating as well as shelter. So a way to get there faster would be a mix of benches and shelters to get more seating out there in general. We asked them this question, 13, we asked them if they would ride more if we had staff down at the cultural center of any sort to maybe provide information and keep an eye on things and be a presence. And it scored very poorly. This was a real surprise. 4.1, low staff. So perhaps the riders don't see the safety or the security issue like the outsiders do. Because in our, obviously we're not here to break down the other part of it yet. We'll do that when we meet again, when that report's ready. But we heard from other people this perception of safety at the Culture Center as being an issue. But the riders don't seem to agree. I think they would enjoy it if we were able to do it, if we had ticket sales down there and trip planning info. It's my gut feeling that they would enjoy that, but it did not score well on this questionnaire, and we don't have any plans immediately to do that anyhow. Question 14, they'd ride more if the dispatchers and drivers were friendlier, scored very low, which tells us that our dispatchers and drivers are very friendly, which is great. This one refers to that earlier question where earlier we showed two colored bars where one was the percent of ridership and the percent of respondents. This is just the respondents. So we got 45 or so completed surveys off the Route 20, 36 or so off the 2. So this sort of shows the selected home route for the surveys. Question 16, we asked them where they're getting their service information from, and we offered a few choices plus other, and most of the others were from drivers. So they'd wait for the door to open and ask the driver something. So that scored fairly high too, but the highest scoring was the schedule brochure. So it's a reminder how important that print document is. And then it was interesting to see that the website and phone were about equal. Information at bus stops, which we do a very poor job at this point, and a lot of room for improvement, that scored pretty high. So that's an area of promise that if we get more and more information out to the bus stops, it's something that it looks like they appreciate. Then we finished with some demographics. Gender, about half the respondents were female. Then there was folks, the cumulative males and folks that did not answer the question were the other half. We asked for the age, and we have some age brackets, and this is pretty representative, I think, of what our system is right now today. We don't have many young people on the bus. Most of the respondents were 25 to 44 and 45 to 64, which is a lot different than what you might see in a different transit agency where youth reigns supreme in some places. But we don't have much of a high school ridership, nor do we have a great college ridership yet. So I think that's reflected in this age breakout. Almost done.
If I can just interrupt you a little bit, because I know that one of our directors has to leave at 4:55.
Okay.
I'm wondering, we're at 4:38 right now. I'm wondering if we can hold off any additional, are you about done with this?
Yeah, we're almost done.
And then I'll quickly offer for board comment and public comment on item number 10. Seeing that, I'd like to see if we have some more exigent items on there to discuss. Is there any action on item 10 that we need to, it's just a discussion only?
Yes, that's correct.
So there is nothing else to do at this point with regard to filing or accepting that. The only thing I questioned, I was a little disappointed at one point. I was a little disappointed with the responses about the Medford Grants Pass extension. I kind of thought that would be going to be a little bit higher. Maybe that has a lot to do with the 199 traffic that is, well, it's not a highly trafficked route, and I thought that might be an alternate that would kind of rival 20, but apparently it needs some work. I guess we'll have to look at that to see how we can increase ridership on that. Are there any other board comments, director's comments on item number 10? If not, we'll...
Are we not going to go through this whole report? We're just going to stop it?
Well, are you...
We're almost done. I think we got a couple slides left. So slide 26 shows the income, self-identified income level for their families. And if you look at it, I mean, it's the two bars on the left are amazing, that most of the respondents were under 20,000 a year. So our ridership is very transit dependent. And then this last one's a good one. We asked them if there was just one thing we could improve, what would it be? And we gave them a few choices, or they could write something in. And Sunday service popped as a surprise winner, with later in the evening, nipping at the heels, and then better Saturdays, which you might recall my predecessor had provided a Saturday service at the exact same level as weekdays, which is highly unusual, and we just undid some of that to save cash. So that's probably why that one finished third, because some folks are still impacted by that. That was pretty fresh change at the time this was taken. So yeah, that's the last slide, and it's really interesting. So Sunday's something that we should probably at least start thinking about. Again, funding's not exactly robust right now, but we can talk about all of this. I'd like to come back at our next meeting and start looking at budget for next year and some choices and options we have, and now we have a little more insight into what the riders feel for sure.
Okay. I'd like to leave it open to discuss 10 additionally after we cover more exigent items, and I know some of us are on a tight schedule, so let's not close 10 for right now, just put it off to the side. What would you like to go to next, Joe? Because we have some challenged...
I'd like to go to item 11. Dan Herron's going to talk about a grant opportunity that we want to apply for.
So we're going to keep 10 open at this time, so that all of us can be here for Dan's report, and it's also Chuck Clarkson's report, so hopefully before 4:55. Is that all right with you, Director?
That's great.
Short?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Dan?
Good. We've got about 4 slides to go through. I'll go through them fairly quickly. We did get a chance to go after money. We're calling this project the 101 Corridor Transit Improvement Program. Next slide. The money that was brought to our attention by Tamara Layton, actually, that we should re-examine this money because we've always seen it as train money, rail money. It's called TIRP, and rail is in there, and all sorts of reasons for thinking this is only for the big guys. But rereading it, it's not. So we thought, what have we got to lose? We went in with a $300,000 bid because 2.4 billion is what they're wanting to give out for the next 5-year round. Next slide, please. Now it was simply a timing problem why you haven't seen this before it went out the door, because the deadline was last week. So we had to get this in and are bringing it to your attention to ratify the proposal and talk a little bit about whether or not any, normally this is not the way we do it. We're bringing the idea and refine the idea with you. But we went after getting more money for Route 20. That is what we've been chopped back. So we're looking for a midday run from Smith River to Arcata, and for 2 years. That's not forever, but to get it started. We also have another component for equipping the buses with Wi-Fi and plug-in receptacles for phones right on the bus, and those are fairly popular things elsewhere. They actually have shown increases up to 20% in some of the riders. Providing free rides to the target student population. Yes, we think that that is a definite one that will introduce them to the system, get them used to using it, but also have a shadow effect for many years after 1 quarter free for college students. We're talking about the junior college and the 4-year institution, so we're looking for more ridership on Route 20. And we're looking for just a little bit of more administrative money to make sure this happens. It won't happen unless we put the word out. We know that there are things that we need to be talking to the community about so that people understand what a bargain the transit is. So the total request is for $3,200. The application is in. We'll hear later on it. We're asking for your ratification of that at this time. And we're also asking if similar situations come up where deadlines are before the time that we can run it past the group, we'd like Joe to have the signature authority to get something in. We can always change it later, but the idea is to get some authority for what we already just did last week. Those are the two recommendations. With that, I'll leave it to question.
I do. So you said it's already been requested in, so it went in without any letters of support, I'm assuming?
Letters of support weren't requested at this point. It's very clear that we will need close partnerships. And we've really actually only started with College of Redwood with them.
Yeah, so I mean, I get what you're doing in the FAST and all this stuff, and there's another thing that we canceled a December meeting, and we could have talked about this, because I feel much more comfortable when grants are being submitted that they come before the board. I think it's really important. Absolutely. I also think it's very imperative when you submit a grant that you have letters to support College of the Redwoods, Humboldt State, local board of supervisors. I mean, it's important. That's what helps solidify grant applications. So I appreciate that you got it together and you got it through, but I think it's really important in the future that we get it together before, get it together strong, especially when they're competitive bids, so that we do have make sure that we have that solid chance of going after them. When do you think this is going to be rewarded? Do you have any idea, Tamara, and/or?
It's very likely this will be 6 months before we hear.
So we're talking way out there, okay. Excellent, thank you.
Additional comments? Questions? Public comments?
I'm Tamara Layton with the Local Transportation Commission. The Prop 1B money is, I don't know a lot of specifics about this grant opportunity. I just really did just forward it to our transit folks and say, take a second look at this. With the Prop 1B, a lot of the funding sources are present something initial and then present something more full when we are doing some vetting down the road. I don't know if this is one of those opportunities or if the submission is a final submission, a final and thorough submission. So I know that many of the county grants they apply for also focus in that way, where there's an initial submission, it's more like a qualifying query followed up with the whole shebang of paperwork and submission. It is sometimes awkward to have to pass up on a grant opportunity because the timing isn't right with a board meeting. Most of the this doesn't happen. This is very unusual. If the board were uncomfortable with the submission, Redwood Coast Transit Authority would simply withdraw their submission. So I don't think that there's a risk to the board or the community in making this. I do agree that it's an unusual circumstance with it not coming to the board beforehand, but if faced with the opportunity to submit or to not submit, I think that there's very low risk in submitting other than the staff time to do so. And I think that with this proposal submission, it was probably lighter on the paperwork. There's some of our Prop 1B submissions that, cost, $10,000, $12,000 to get together this submission. The Active Transportation Program grants are one of those that are really expensive once you get the whole proposal together. So I have mixed feelings. I think that, on one hand, it's important to take care of the opportunities when you can, and that this is a low risk because with a simple phone call or email, the application can be withdrawn. And in this application, it was lighter on the paperwork portion of it, and that I would anticipate more work down the road. In terms of risk to the community, there is no risk. If the board were to direct staff to withdraw the application, it would simply be done. So those are my comments.
Okay. Mr. Lonsdale?
Bill Lonsdale again. I am not necessarily objecting to what's being proposed, but I do want to sound a note of caution about abrogating your own authority in these matters. What, in essence, we're saying is that there will be times when we don't have enough information ahead of time to convene the board and consider a grant application. In some areas, it could be called an intelligence failure. In others, it could be that the staff is out there hustling for us and they've identified an opportunity that has to be grasped now, then that's a different story. But I do want to caution about a wholesale grant of signature authority. Thank you.
Any additional director comments? Let me just respond to the canceled meeting in December. When we set our meetings up, we're all operating in a budget. We try to keep in, I know, Dan and Joe, you know how I am about money and operating in the black up to through the 12th month. And I ask you ahead of time, do we need a meeting? If there's and then when I get a response back, no, we're fine, we have no important exigent business, we can forego a meeting, and thereby saving lots of money. Now, if something comes up like a grant, then I would expect you to tell me so that we can make that decision. Well, that's important enough to put it on there. So I don't think we're miscommunicating, but when we look at meetings, we need to see what kind of business we're going to discuss at that meeting. If it's not what I call priority business, and I was not aware that this grant was earlier available, then perhaps we would have reconsidered, but I didn't get that information from you. So I think communication is important. When we're setting up our next meeting, which will be sometime in February, that if there's something on there that is exigent, we need to know that. So all of us certainly can be here. So having said that, I don't regret canceling the December meeting. It was done on information that was available to me. So again, Director Darren, you have to go soon. So is there anything?
My only thought was I'm a relatively novice councilman, and I don't believe, I can't recall a time where this instance has happened in my experience. So I imagine it happens relatively seldom. But Lori, I believe, makes a good point. I wonder about the opportunity to convene a special meeting when these opportunities do, reveal themselves, however it can, with Ms. Layton bringing it to our attention. So I weighing risk versus the quality of the product, I don't know. I guess I'm relatively neutral. I don't know what I don't know that it would happen that often to where it would be a real worry for the board. At the same time, I do agree that the board should be apprised of that.
Okay. Point taken. Before you depart, Director Short, do we have anything on the agenda that would be helpful? All five of us are hearing that. Joe, at this point. Okay. I wonder if we could ask for Chuck's report now at this point, because that's operations while Darren is still here. Yes?
Mr. Chair, do we need to vote or take a motion on?
I don't see any action item on.
Do we need to decide if we're going to go forward with the grant application, or?
There is that.
There's two things, yeah.
Okay, there is an action.
There is.
They're asking for us to okay on the grant, and they're asking for us to give
Yep.
okay for future.
Okay. All right, then we'll open it up to public comments on this. If there are none, then we'll take board action. I'll entertain a motion at this point.
Mr. Chair, I have a motion. I make a motion that we go ahead and go forward with the grant application. And the second item is help me out here, apply for the TCIRP funding and similar grant funding in the future that aligns with RCTA board policy. Did I get that right?
Yeah? Okay.
So we're taking them together?
Yes, you probably should do them individually.
I make a motion that we go ahead and...
Hold on a second. We have a motion on the floor. Do you want to retract your motion
Well, I was
and
trying
do
to-
it one at a time?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull the pieces out of here. So it looks like we're going to make a motion to apply for the TCIRP funding.
Okay.
Can we just make a motion on that?
And do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion from the audience on that? Let's poll the vote. Board members, any
Director
additional?
Short?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Cohen?
Yes.
Director Gitlin?
Yes.
Chairman Keim?
Yes.
Okay, now will I entertain the second motion having to do with the future of the aligned, okay, let's see, you've got the TCIRP funding, and this would be the grant funding for the future that aligns with RCTA policy board. I'll take a motion on that. None? Okay. Okay.
And with that,
Just we're looking at choice A and choice B.
Again, I'm trying to pull the pieces out, but I'm going to go to the first piece, make a motion to approve the 101 corridor TCIRP project and request for board authorization. Would that be it?
Yeah.
We already did
Somebody
that.
help me.
We've got that covered.
Okay,
I'm looking for a second motion.
This-
We had a request to split these motions.
okay.
Okay, so that was the second one. I'm looking for a motion on the second, rather than lumping them together, which I didn't see was problematic, but
And would that be to apply for similar grant funding in the future that aligns with RCTA board policy?
Without board
Without
approval.
board approval.
Without board approval? I make
Right.
that motion. I make that nomination, suggestion.
no, motion. Okay, do I have a second for that? No second. I'll second it. So now we have a discussion on that. Public? Okay. Board comments?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and say, I've worked at Caltrans for 31 years, and I have done grants, and I have done lots of programs. And Director Layton came up here and spoke that sometimes things come up that we have to respond quickly to. And I do see a need to have meetings, but sometimes these things happen where we have to respond. And I'm just going to speak to you from experience from what I've done for the state for 31 years. So I think this is one of those situations where we have to be flexible and be responsive to that.
Okay, Nicole, would you read back the second motion, which reads...
Can I comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
I respect what Director Layton's saying, but it doesn't happen that often. It's very easy to reach out and put together a meeting. It's not a hard thing to do. We do it often. This isn't the first time this has happened. I get where you're coming from, and but we're a board, and we make these decisions. And whether it's a phone call, whether it's an email, whether it's all of us coming together for the meeting, I think it's important to follow procedures and, the way that, that's just me personally, though. I just think that it doesn't take that much effort to get the board's opinion on a grant.
So Nicole, would you read back the second motion, please?
The second motion was conducted by Director Smith, and it was to apply for TCIRP funding and similar grant funding in the future that aligns with RCTA board policies.
Okay. Let's take a vote on it. Okay, got it. We've had public comment. Let's vote on it.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Gitlin?
Yes?
Director Cohen?
No.
Chairman Keim?
No.
Okay, so it does not pass. It ties 2-2, and we'll move on from there. Okay. Let's move on to the general manager report. Let's finish off anything, and we've kind of just joined in our meeting a little bit. Is there anything else on item number 10 that you wanted to discuss, the board wanted to discuss, that we kind of interrupted at the end? We went through the slides quickly because Director Short had a time frame. Is there anything else that this board wishes to discuss on item number 10, the presentation of the survey?
Chair, I have a comment.
Yes.
First of all, Joe, I want to go back and clarify the focus groups versus the rider information on the survey. So the focus group members didn't necessarily have to ride the bus to provide input. Is that right?
That's correct. Again, we don't have that report back, but I sat in on every interview, so it's a blur. We had a group of student riders from College of Redwood's Crescent City campus, so they were riders, but there was a couple non-riders that joined us. And then we had a group that we met down at the Wild Rivers Foundation of existing riders that we recruited on board. So a couple of the groups were riders, but a couple, 3 weren't.
And the second thing I want to mention is that we know that we have a constrained budget in our transit operation. And I want to take a minute once again and thank Director Layton and the Transportation Commission for transferring funds for us, for bus shelters, for benches, for all the things you've talked about. So we're grateful to Director Layton for what she's done.
Okay, so we'll close item number 10 now. There's no further discussion. There was no action on that item other than the presentation of the report. 11 is complete, and we'll move on to you, Joe. Item number 12, General Manager Verbal Report.
Okay, I'll try to be real brief because this has gotten long. All 4 of the new buses that we procured a few months ago are now in service. The last 2 laggards were the 2 larger buses that came to us with some build problems that we identified that Nick's been working on. Now they're all in service. I believe they went in just before the holidays into service. The adopted bus is an interesting example of well, it's kind of germane to what we just talked about, not to beat a dead horse, but it was an opportunity that emerged quickly from Caltrans when they asked statewide that they had funded a project in Calaveras County for a commuter service into Stockton of the local transit agency there, and the project had failed. And then Caltrans was then retracting the bus from them, and they called out to everybody, see if anyone's interested in this bus that does 5311 type service, which 5311F, which we do. So we went ahead and said yes, and got our hat in the ring on that, and then fortunately, they awarded the bus to us. So that adopted bus is still getting its paperwork changed, but it's here in town, it's being rebranded to our brand, and it's going to be our bus now with no local match, nothing. We did have to pay to get the graphics put on it, but it was an opportunity that emerged quick. If we didn't act quick, it could have went away or would have went to someone else. So that adopted bus is on track to probably go into service in February. We're still working with Caltrans on the certificate of title and stuff, because it's a very unusual thing to transfer a bus between transit agencies, but it's being orchestrated by the Caltrans staff in Sacramento, and we're just following their directions and getting ready to use this vehicle. It's got about 80,000 miles, so it's a couple years old, but it'll help. It's going to improve our fleet right away.
How many passengers is it?
25, I think.
Big one.
It's not huge. It's a medium to medium large size bus. It'll be one of our smaller that we use on the Arcata run.
Okay, any additional items?
Just wanted to mention a concept that emerged in the last few weeks of possibly sharing an office with the local Transportation Commission Executive Director. Tamara is here if we want to ask her any questions about it. She's recently leased an office here in town that has an extra room that would be nice for us to use as a place to meet during the day when we're here. Today's a great example because I had to check out of my hotel at like 11. I basically had nowhere to really work indoors except maybe Starbucks from then till 3. So we're interested in doing it. We've received an offer that's very fair from Tamara to rent, lease the office space for $250 a month, which will include utilities and internet, which is super important, and not every, as we all know, not every hotel internet's created equal. So I'd like to do that, and it would basically most of the costs would be offset by less lodging expenses when I'm in town. So we'd like to see what the board thinks about that. If it's favored, then we can move ahead on participating with her on that. We're not sure the duration of it necessarily, a year or so to
So this will have to come back for
start.
the next meeting, because they'll have to agendize it.
It could be, yeah.
And that's it. I don't know, can we take a consensus on
Well,
that?
in a way, we're not asking it to be paid out of the agency's budget. This is currently, these costs are showing up on my invoice at the end of the month in lodging costs. So that would just be then a standing like office cost instead. So it,
So it's going to be a cost to your contract.
yeah,
So it is a change to your contract.
yeah.
But it's offset by the lodging.
Right, yeah, the lodging
You're gonna
costs would be
sleep in the
reduced.
You're going to sleep in the office?
Perhaps a little bit, yes. And that's the only way to make it pencil really for us. We're dedicated bunch. Yeah.
I'm not looking to hasten this thing, but I think maybe we need to bring it back and have a little discussion
Okay.
on it at the next meeting.
Sounds good.
You're the chairman on this, Chairman Kime, it's your call on this. If you want to bring it back, I mean, I'm speaking only as a member of this board. Do you want to bring it back? or-
Yes, let's bring
Okay,
that
so you bring it
back.
back for discussion and see how the contract has changed. You're going to be comfortable there? I don't know, where is this, at 475 8th Street?
Yes.
Yeah. Know the neighborhood a little bit. Okay, then we'll bring it back for discussion at the next meeting. Is there public input on this, Mr. Lonsdale, or anybody else here would like to? Okay, Tamara, I'd kick in how you felt about it. You've obviously had the discussion on this. So we'll bring it back next meeting. Let's look at Chuck Clarkson's report this time, first-time transit operations verbal report.
Good afternoon, Board, and I can make this pretty quick. So, as Joe said, we've got the new buses online. Nick stepped up and took on some challenges there and got that done pretty well. Also, let me back up. What I really wanted to start with, before I even got into that, was I wanted to mention how pleased and impressed I've been with the staff that we've got here at RCTA since I got here. The staff in the office, the drivers. I feel pretty blessed as a new guy coming in to have the core people that I have that are committed to safety, they're committed to making it work, and their work ethic has been exemplary. And so I've been very pleased with that development since I got here. Right now, we have one bus down. Once again, Nick doing a great job. I've looked back at the minutes over the last year, and before I got here, I saw it was usually 5 or 6 down, and significant improvement there. Fernando and Nick and I are working on getting a good strategy together to get the plexiglass replaced in the shelters that's missing. We lost 2 more on Saturday over on Front Street. Happened in between 2 buses coming in. So we know the exact 5 minutes that it happened in. Beyond that, we don't have a clue. But Fernando got right down there and got it cleaned up right away on Saturday. Our staffing right now is adequate, but we are looking to hire a couple more people. We've got a couple of applications and some interviews that we're setting up right now. And if we can bring them on board, then we're going to be in great shape staffing-wise to cover any incidentals that happen, like sickness or someone not being able to make their shift for some reason, and we can continue uninterrupted and smooth flow. We did have a bus breakdown on the 199 route last Thursday. We could go tomorrow. I was riding the Route 20 route, doing some evaluation with our driver on that route, and the staff stepped up and took care of the whole thing perfectly. We were about 19 minutes late getting the Smith River run going because of that, but all in all, it was a pretty good job on the staff getting that bus, because it broke down in the road. We didn't have much place to get off the road, and we got that cleaned up and taken care of pretty quickly, and Nick had the bus fixed at the end of business day. So pretty pleased with how that turned out of an unfortunate situation. There are 2 complaints that have come up that I wanted to bring to your attention. One has to do with a call that I took where the person very upset that we don't have our schedules in the shelters. And I assured her that I understood the issue, and it is something that we continue to look at, and she appreciated the response, and we moved on from there. The other complaint, and I'm sorry I didn't get the address, I meant to get the address before I came, but we've had a place where there's 3 houses in close proximity to each other, and our dial-a-ride has been driving in to pick up a person and then turning around in the kind of common driveway that the 3 houses share. In the course of doing that, front right wheel has been crossing over into the grass of one of the neighbors that appropriately called and let us know that they really wouldn't like for that to not happen anymore. Totally see their point. We've instructed the drivers of a different way to maneuver in and out of there so that that doesn't happen. On a more personal, professional level, this next weekend I'll be attending the CERT training to get part of the community and a part of the emergency preparedness plan for anything that we can be a part of should the need arise. And along with that, further training with the Transit and Paratransit Management Certificate Program. I'm slated to start that on February 2nd, and then it's every other Friday all the way until May 25th, and I will be traveling to San Jose to take those courses and getting that certification in. Yeah, that's kind of the bulk of my report. Any questions or clarifications I can give you?
How are you going to get to San Jose?
Probably I'm going to rent a car and then get a motel there. The various options I've looked at, it's pretty close to the same amount of money to just rent a car for the 3 days.
And Chuck, if I recall right, isn't that a CalAct scholarship that enables you to do that?
It is. I'm half scholarship.
So that's not paid by Transit, that's paid by CalAct.
Half of it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, they scholarship
subsidy.
half of it for me.
Yeah.
We've got the flights starting from Contour Air. I think it's not going to meet your timetable. $75 fares from CEC to Oakland.
Is that in place now?
It's hopefully it will effectuate. I'm sorry to say it's March 1st. I think
Okay.
it's right around there, and that doesn't meet your schedule
Right.
with your training. But that's in the future. Right now, we have no air service, but
Yeah.
that's something that it's on the table. So for future reference, you need to get down to the Bay Area and Oakland, then rent your car. You know, $75 pretty reasonable fare.
Yeah, that's the exact reason why I've really only planned for the first 2 sessions that I'm going down to get that taken care of, because I did look online and saw that the March 1st. So.
Okay. Any other comments or questions for Chuck regarding his report? Public comments? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, good. Let's go to announcements, and we'll go from here. Board members, any announcements?
2 of the 5 are going to be out of town on the 15th. Is that the next scheduled meeting? Do you have that down, Joe, for February 15th? So do we want to discuss possibly changing that date?
Is it Wednesday the 14th? Or what's the date?
Or-
You're right, Roger, we need the third Wednesday, so it is
14th.
21st.
21st, okay.
Okay, so that's all right. So the next meeting is
So it's not that 3rd week, okay.
2/21.
I'd like to know what's going on with the bus stop, get updates on that. Unless you want to do that in detail via email, but, you know, I mean, that whole thing, I felt like if we were here in December, that wouldn't have gotten, we would have asked what's going on. I can't help but wondering, with all of us bugging you, would that have happened? So you're thinking it's not important to have a meeting in February, and you're willing to give us well, we just talked about having items come back that potential things on the actual buses, you know, reports as far as what we can do on actual buses for count. I was going to talk to you possibly, you know, about apps. I'd like to know information on that. We talked about bringing back the $250 a month for, with your contract. How is that all going to work? If you take that, I mean, these are just things that came up in this meeting. Are we going to put them off till March? Or are they things you don't think we need to discuss in February?
We can meet in February if we like, certainly like the office thing, probably better as soon as we later.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I won't be here in February. I'm just bringing up stuff that we just talked about. I mean, to make sure that, you know, I don't know that you're going to have enough, for what I requested, I don't know that you're going to have enough time to pull all that together for the February meeting. Yeah. Yeah, but that's got to come back at some point. Just like, you know, anyways. And then we just talked about the 250 and said that would be next meeting. I don't think you want to put that off 2 months.
So what's your suggestion on the next meeting date? We have here, you mentioned 2 out of 5 are not going to be available.
On the 14th, but
On
you
the
said it was the
14th.
21st.
So
that's-
now you're
21st.
talking about the third Wednesday, the 21st. Do you have a problem with putting that date, or do you want a previous, the Wednesday before, the 7th?
No, the 21st is good.
Okay.
Yep,
So we are going to meet on.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't think we are meeting in February.
Yes.
It's a question of what date.
21st. Yes,
We are going to have a February meeting.
yes.
Yeah, I didn't hear we weren't.
One thing I'd like to do if you guys meet in February is I'd like to kind of do a budget, maybe retreat, maybe we can meet over at the operations center. We had a really great meeting there about a year ago.
Yep.
Now that security gates are in, we did a lot of improvements around.
That'd be great.
You know, we can kind of talk a little more informally about next year's budget and some of these questions. I was going to do that maybe in March. Do you guys want to hold that?
I would like to hold off. I'd like to be at that, and I will not be in town. No, I am gone for 2 weeks in February.
So we'll do a regular one, and then we'll do regular in February, and then maybe we'll do March and April.
Okay, so the next scheduled meeting is February 21st
At 3:30.
at 3:30 here in this chambers. Okay.
Yep.
Announcements, are there any additional announcements at this point? I wanted to have also, in the future discussions, Madam Chairperson, I'll speak to you for this, just not the chair for this meeting, which you are, but we had conducted discussions about seasonally offering to work with state and national parks. Joe, you recall, I think that was not going pretty much, I'm sorry. Okay. So I'd like to have that reintroduced, that subject reintroduced, about discussions with state and national parks about bringing our vehicles in at their cost to get people out of their vehicles and put them in our buses to go into Stout Grove and those where they're normally taking cars, and they wanted to get cars off that road which they maintain. It's kind of wasting away. So I'd like to bring in that discussion again, if you would,
Okay.
Chair's permission, to review that to see if they're in a better frame of mind and they have a budget to help support that idea. Remember, we had discussed this a couple of years ago, and unfortunately, they didn't have the budget, and really, it didn't get pursued. So can we have that discussion again in the coming months?
Yep.
And the other one is advertising, to create a revenue stream, another revenue stream. That was being discussed. I don't know if you had much response. I'd like to get an update in future meetings about getting some additional income coming in on our buses, which are traveling all around for potential advertisers.
If the board has time, I can give you a 60-second update on that one, because I actually have been busy with that the last 24 hours.
Sure, go.
So we did an RFP, we crafted it, we never released it, but we pre-released it and gave it to a couple. We approached the radio group locally, bi-coastal, we approached the newspapers. After some hemming and hawing, neither are interested in working with us, so that's disappointing. But we do seem to have some interest from a sign company in town, which is a critical part of this. So if the board is interested, at the next meeting, I should be able to come up with a potential model that we could do it. It might be something that, as far as the sales and management of it, something that, that I could be interested in bidding on to help with. But the key thing is having the local sign maker that's eager, interested, and competent. I think we found that at least, so that's a good first step finally. So that can be an item on the next meeting. An update on that. That all broke in the last few hours, actually.
Okay. Any additional comments? Okay, we will adjourn.